The word children is a relatively recent word in human history. There were no children before sometime, I think, in the late 1800s.
Really?
Yeah, I can get the
That's
reference for you
very
for your book
interesting.
if you're
Yeah.
interested. There were just smaller people. There were just younger people.
Oh.
The concept of children was a concept that was invented. So we don't view children as whole human beings.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode 152. Today, we're talking about how to talk to kids with Oren Jay Sofer. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have, and when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clark-Field's Mindful Mama mentor. I help smart, thoughtful moms stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting course, and I'm the author of the upcoming new book, Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Welcome back, dear listener. So glad you are here today. This is going to be an awesome episode. I was so excited to talk to Oren Jay Sofer. You are going to really, really enjoy this conversation. He wrote an amazing book that I will tell you about. Actually, let me just tell you about right away. How about that? That would be good. But I want to thank you for being here. So glad you are here. So Oren Jay Sofer, he is the author of this upcoming book. It's out, actually. It's called Say What You Mean, A Mindful Approach to NonViolent Communication. And he teaches meditation and communication nationally. He's a member of the Spirit Rock Teachers Council. He holds degrees in comparative religion, and he's a certified trainer of nonviolent communication and somatic experiencing practitioner for trauma healing. And his book, Say What You Mean, is awesome. So I am so excited for you to sit down at the table with me and join me in talking to Oren when we talk about, what are some of the pitfalls to avoid when talking to kids, right? This is like what our parenting comes down to, right? Is having conversations, talking to our kids in a lot of ways. What are some of the pitfalls in communicating in general? So in this episode, I talked to Oren about his book, which brings together mindfulness and nonviolent communication, which is a powerful way of communicating. And you'll learn some simple yet powerful practices to develop healthy, effective, and more satisfying ways of communicating. And some of the takeaways I had from this are, listen up for these two questions that will really transform the way you talk to your kids. You'll hear us talk about the cultural messages that are so deeply embedded that we're not even aware of them. So maybe this will help wake you up to them. And, how our communication patterns are actually quite physical. They're encoded in our nervous system. So it takes a lot to sort of change this. So before we dive into this episode, there's something very directly related is that the Mindful Parenting course, which brings together skillful communication and mindfulness for all the skills we need as parents, right? It brings together these two big things because one without the other doesn't work, is starting soon. And you can get involved for free with the Mindful Parenting free training. It's a 4-day live free training that I'll be doing coming right up in February 4th through 7th, 2019. So don't miss it. Go to mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. That's mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training and be a part of it because it's going to be awesome. And then keep an eye out for the opening of the Mindful Parenting course, which you can join. And I have a super, super cool announcement for you. And that is that I have decided I just want to keep seeing my peeps forever and I want to hear the updates and all that. So we have decided as a team that when you join Mindful Parenting, you don't just get access to the 8-week course. You don't just get access to a whole year of support, monthly support calls. We actually are going to invite you to keep coming back forever. Yeah, so we are going to keep access open forever for all the coaching calls, all the materials, all the support. So it's kind of like joining a team. You just can keep coming back and we will continue to support you. So you can learn more about that at mindfulparentingcourse.com or head over to mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. All right, now on to this episode. Oren, thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Hunter. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you could be here too. And as I was telling you, I was so excited about your book because I'm in the middle of writing Raising Good Humans. And I could see from this beautiful book, which is Say What You Mean, that you saw a very similar thing that I saw, which was that these systems of communication require a lot of self-awareness and a lot of mindfulness. And you brought that mindfulness to that skillful communication, which makes me so excited. I get a little excited for my podcast, but not quite this excited. So anyway, I was thinking about you and your story about this, and I was wondering about what were the kind of communications that you grew up with in your family, and what were the systems of communication like when you were a child?
Oh dear. Well, mom and dad probably won't listen to this show. So yeah, thank you. I feel very fortunate. I grew up in a Jewish family, and I certainly got a good dose of should and, be good, and the kind of cultural messages that are so deeply embedded that we're not even aware of them, right? Mm-hmm. Concepts of right and wrong, should and shouldn't. This is, for thousands of years, this is how human society has created agreements to meet collective needs, right? Is through a story about moralistic judgments, that there is the way of controlling impulses and behavior is through shame, which is the primary tool for socialization, and the ideas of right and wrong, good and bad, should and shouldn't. And they're strategies, they're concepts that humans create. If you look at nature, there's no such thing as should. Should a tree grow or not? Should it have a branch here or not? Should this volcano explode? Or it's just, things just are the way they are. Animals don't feel remorse. There's no right or wrong in nature. The ethical sense is a human capacity. It's one of the great gifts that we have as human beings, that ability to feel something moral in the heart. And so this gets languaged in terms of right and wrong, but then that has unintended consequences, I would say, because when we view things through that lens, it's very easy to disconnect from our humanity. It's very easy to view others as separate from us. And if somebody is wrong or bad, or they do something they shouldn't do, well, then what follows logically, they deserve to be punished. And that's a strategy for, all kinds of agreements that we have as a family or a society, but it very easily leads to violence. And so the perspectives of nonviolent communication, and I would imagine from the little I understand of Thomas Gordon's work in parent effectiveness training, is to view things from a different perspective and from a different lens, from the lens of shared human needs, that says, well, this behavior is an attempt to meet some need. Mm-hmm. But it's not meeting these other needs of myself or of your sister or of your father or of our school or of our classroom, and starting to teach children to source the sense of ethics internally. So this is kind of a long-winded way of saying, my parents loved me deeply. They, instilled in me beautiful values of kindness and compassion and generosity and seeing people for who they are rather than judging people based on the color of their skin or their social location or economic status or anything like that. As I mentioned, I grew up in a Jewish family, so social change and contributing to society was a core value. And so I'm deeply grateful for the values that my parents instilled in me. And at the same time, unintentionally, they transmitted the concepts and the ways of thinking that are so ordinary and kind of endemic in our society that I was just mentioning. And so that has all kinds of effects in terms of our sense of empowerment, right? When we think in terms of should and shouldn't, we lose a certain amount of agency and empowerment inside ourselves. Because if I have to do this, if I should do this, now I'm in conflict, right? Because if I don't want to do something, if I want to do something, I don't have to tell myself, Oren, you really should do this. You really have to do it. Come on, Oren, you got to get right. Those kinds of thoughts don't need to arise because I'm connected with my innate sense of motivation. And if we really step back and look at it from a clear and honest perspective, we don't have to do anything in life. We're continually choosing. Not only don't we have to do anything, like, well, no, I got to go to work. Well, you could stop going to work. You might lose your job, and then you wouldn't have resources to buy food or a place to live, and you'd end up out on the street. So that is a choice you could theoretically make, but it's because you value having a home, having food, being able to provide for your family, that we choose to go to work. So it is actually a choice. So not only don't we have to do anything, but the other aspect is that we very quickly realize as we parent our children that we can't actually force or make them do anything. We can only make them wish they had. We can only make them regret wish they had. So these concepts are quite limited. And when we think in those terms, one, it disconnects us from our sense of authentic willingness and desire and agency to recognize, actually, I'm choosing to do this. I want to do this because it's going to meet certain needs or values that are important to me. And simultaneously, you have to go to school, right? You have to clean up your room. It's time to go to bed, right? You have to go to bed because it's time to go to bed. What we communicate there with our children in an unintentional and unconscious way is we are subtly or not so subtly disempowering them from sourcing their sense of direction, choice, and agency internally, and starting to gauge what is acceptable and what they can and can't do based on an external imagined authority, what I should do, what I have to do. And then we begin to live in this way that is incredibly narrow and kind of oppressive internally because we've been socialized and conditioned to disconnect and disengage from our authentic truth. I know I've been talking.
No, this is beautiful. I love this. And you're speaking my language in so many ways. And so what you're saying is that when we speak in this language of should and shouldn't to our children, especially, and to others, but we are disconnecting our kids from their own innate willingness and desire to be maybe helpful or to do the different things. And so what we're creating with this, when we kind of maybe use power over them and you create these shoulds, what we're creating them is maybe a constant sense of conflict of what I want is wrong and what I should do is what everyone else wants. And I can imagine that this is like a very deep-seated foundational kind of belief that the vast majority of us hold this, that
absolutely
what I want is actually wrong. So I can't trust myself.
Yeah. And it's so insidious. We're not often fully conscious of it.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens here, and I want to give an example of this sense of should versus being connected to needs. But when we use our power to force our children to do something, in addition to what you just mentioned around being disconnected from our innate desire and trusting that our own needs matter, what we do is we don't give them the opportunity to learn how to consider others' needs.
Yes.
So a healthy human being, when met with demands, what does a healthy human being do? We resist. Why? Because autonomy is really important for you. So if your children are resisting you, that's a good thing. It means that they're in touch with a healthy sense of autonomy. So when we use our power to try to force children, we set up that dynamic of being in conflict of what I want versus what you want, versus being able to help our children to understand, help educate them to recognize what you want is an attempt to meet your needs, and I value those, and there are other people who have other needs, and I want to invite you to consider other people's needs. So one story, some friends were over who have a young child. I think the child was about 3 or 4 at the time. And so, like a 3 or 4-year-old child is having fun jumping on our couch, right? Why not? That's pretty fun. So, of course, Papa wants to respect our home and our couch and furniture and says, no, couches aren't for jumping. Come on, off the couch. Couches aren't for jumping, right? So there's no should there, but there's that implicit understanding. There are things that you should and shouldn't do that are and aren't okay. Well, why? Why aren't couches for jumping, right? So I explained to their son, I said, we really like our couch. Well, first what I did is I empathized with the kid. I said, wow, that looks really fun. I love to jump too. And then I explained, I said, we really like our couch. It's really good to sit on too. And I'm a little concerned if we all start jumping on the couch, it's not going to be so fun to sit on. I said, here, come on over here. Why don't we jump over here together? Let's see if that's fun. And so he and I started jumping over another part of the room together, right? So that's just one very small example of reframing something in terms of a should. Couches aren't for jumping. You shouldn't do that. That's wrong. Versus why? Well, these people who like to sit on this couch all the time have a certain need, and there's another way to meet your need for fun.
That's so beautiful, because you said to that little boy, you said to him, hey, I see you and I hear you. It wasn't just like your needs are invisible. What's going on for you is not important and doesn't matter. You said to him, it matters to me. I see it. I hear it. And that acknowledgement is so important, so important. And then to say, to explain why. It's so beautiful. I mean, I feel like in some ways we are shifting our language a little bit. Like I saw at the art museum, the art museum always has like, do not touch the paintings. Mm-hmm. But I saw a little sign at the art museum recently that has the circle over the hand that says, touching damages the paintings.
Yeah, exactly.
Hallelujah, right? It's so simple.
Right.
What a simple shift. Yeah. So you're talking about moving away from these shoulds, but I can imagine the listener looking at this and saying, but there are shoulds and shouldn'ts in life. Don't I have to teach my child the shoulds and shouldn'ts in life? Like that this sounds a little crazy to me, or like I can imagine this voice coming out. So how do you respond to that with this?
Yeah, so a couple different things. So one is when I hear someone say, but there are shoulds and shouldn'ts in life, what I hear is, what I'm understanding there is there's some values that you have that are really strong for you. And you want to make sure that you instill those values in your child, perhaps partly because they're important to you, but also because you want your child to be able to function well in society and to get along with others, to be successful, to have friends and relationships that are meaningful. And you want to teach them the ways of the world. Is that what you're after there when you say that, right? So again, what I'm doing there is I'm listening for the needs behind that strategy of using shoulds and shouldn'ts. And there are a couple different challenges here, and I think this really goes to the heart. This is not easy stuff. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges is that this is not a communication technique. Mm. This is about transforming our consciousness. Mm-hmm. This is about transforming the ways in which we think and perceive our own experience and our relationships with others. These concepts are very deeply rooted. Perception is a very powerful function in human consciousness. It's what creates and determines and structures the meanings that we experience things through. And so should and shouldn't is a very powerful concept in perception, and we're deconstructing that. We are re-examining and interpreting why. Why is the should there? It serves a purpose. Yeah, there are things one should do in life if one values this, if one wants that, right? That's the unstated part. So we're making conscious that unstated framework that says, well, yeah, if you're interested in having friends, it's one should take an interest in others and listen and inquire about their life instead of just speaking about oneself, right? So examining one's own assumptions and beliefs is one part of it that can be a barrier. The other part, and I think this is probably, as if not more pressing for parents, is time.
Yes.
Not only does it take time to learn these tools, but it takes time to use them, particularly at the beginning when we're first learning them. It's a lot easier to say, get off the couch, don't jump. That's wrong. Don't do that. Versus it's taking, that moment to pause, feel one's, instinctive habitual reaction of no, stop, don't do that, and then engage as a human being. The word children is a relatively recent word in human history. There were no children before sometime, I think, in the late 1800s.
Really?
Yeah, I can get the reference for you for your book if you're interested. There were just smaller people. There were just younger people. The concept of children was a concept that was invented. So we don't view children as whole human beings.
Yeah, no, I know.
We view them as lesser somehow. Children are the one place in society where there still isn't full agreement about honoring their innate autonomy and dignity. For good reasons. We have a duty to protect them and keep them safe. And there's a lot of things that they can't do for themselves. But there's still a tremendous amount of power over, force, and oppression used with the best of intentions in families and with parents. So children can understand these concepts even at very, very young ages, the concepts that they have needs and other people have needs, and that we can learn to hold both and consider both. Yeah. So a colleague of mine who I mention in acknowledgments of my book, the late Inbal Kashtan, who did a lot of work with parenting in NVC, tells a story about her son, who she raised with these tools, 3 years old. Early in the morning, grandparents are visiting, sleeping downstairs in the bedroom below them. 5, 6 a.m., her son is banging on the floor with a stick. But what's a parent's job? Get the kid to stop banging so grandma and grandpa can sleep, right? Well, we know where that's going, tug of war, resistance. So fortunately, she had some training in nonviolent communication. She's been studying and teaching this stuff for years. So she says to her child, sweetheart, grandma and grandpa are sleeping downstairs. I'm concerned that you're going to wake them. Would you be willing to bang on the couch? So her child, 3 years old, says to her, I don't want to, but I'm willing to.
That's beautiful.
So
balancing his needs with grandma and grandpa's needs right there. Bam.
3 years old. So she asks, right? And she says, why don't you want to? He says, well, if I bang on the couch, it's not going to wake me up. So he's aware of his needs, why he wants to bang on the floor. He's trying to wake himself up. Well, why are you willing to? Because I want to consider you.
Oh.
Yeah. So that kind of a conversation is only possible when there's trust. When we've developed a relationship of trust with our child, that they recognize, we're not going to use force when it's not really necessary.
Yeah.
That we're willing to take the time when it's possible, given all the circumstances and pressures, to engage and to honor and recognize the child's needs and autonomy and do that negotiation. It's very rare to use conflict as an opportunity to connect. But when we don't do that, when we don't take the time to do that, we deprive our children of one of the most valuable lessons in life, which is to learn how to make peace.
Yeah. How to deal with other people, how to deal with other, and the lessons that we learn on a regular basis are the person with more power, wins. Exactly. The person who's bigger wins. And then we see them pushing that lesson down onto the smaller kids and things like that. And so if we can, I know it makes me feel very excited to imagine a generation of kids who might learn to deal with conflicts in terms of taking care of each other's needs, conflicting needs, rather than the other way we think about it. And, and you spoke about how it takes time and it takes effort and it takes energy to sort of learn this language, right? But you also speak about, there's a couple of things I want to kind of address in what you said. You also speak about, and I really love this, that it's like not a communication technique. And you say this in your book too, which I think is so beautiful. Like, you say that if you just come at this, our intention and our way of approaching things really, really matters. You say we can make I statements and active listen all we want. If we're not genuine in our intention to connect, it's unlikely to bring us any closer. And I love that because these are tools that I teach in my mindful parenting class. And, I bring in this piece about calming down our reactivity, and that piece about getting beneath the strategy to the intention is just so foundational, because and your framework is so beautiful. Oren has a 3-step framework. Lead with presence. So be present, be there rather than in your story. Come from curiosity and care, and then focus on what matters, which is so beautiful. You're so taking these, but then taking that sense of presence, curiosity, and care, and then learning a language to enact that. Because what happened for me was I was able to sort of calm down and come from presence, and then I would say something, at least when my daughter was younger, that was like what my mom might have said to me, "Mom, I love you," that would cause her resistance again, because it would, my daughter had a very, very healthy sense of autonomy. And it would start that whole cycle over again. So that one without the other is ineffective, right? If we can be calm and present, but then our language is unskillful, that doesn't really work. And likewise, it's wonderful to have skillful language, but if it's just a technique, and if you're just reactive and you're just trying to manipulate the situation, that doesn't work either.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We need both together. And that's why I found this combination of nonviolent communication with mindfulness practice and somatic perspectives on the body and the nervous system so powerful for transforming our communication habits and creating the conditions for more meaningful conversations, for having the quality of connection and relationship that we want in our life.
Yeah. And what could be more important? So I want you to explain to the listener what somatic perspectives are, because I don't think that's a defined term, but maybe you could do that. But I also want to understand how you were drawn to nonviolent communication, how you were drawn to mindfulness in your own story.
Sure.
I imagine there was something, it's usually, at least for me, it was a problem.
Yes.
What drew me to wanting to learn all this stuff.
Indeed. Yeah. So maybe first I'll just briefly answer the question about what is this, somatic perspectives or somatic practices. So the word soma just means body. So body-based. And in particular, not the visual body that we see, but the body that we feel from the inside. So working more towards the felt sense and the experiential sense of being in a body. And the reason this is so important is that our communication habits and patterns, they're not just mental, they're not just verbal, they're not even just emotional, they're physical. They become encoded in our nervous system. So that conditioning that we were talking about earlier around conflict or difference that says someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. All of those early childhood and even into adulthood experiences that we have where that's been the case, that gets remembered by our nervous system. And so that's why when there's a difference, a disagreement, or an argument in life, for so many of us, if we don't have training, alarm bells start to go off inside. Right? We start to get anxious, maybe we freeze, or we go on the attack, or we disappear or get defensive. Our nervous system kicks into gear based on past experience. So it's not enough just to be mindful and aware. It's not enough to learn the cognitive tools and perspectives of a communication technique. We also have to learn how to become aware of and contact the deeper patterns that are set in our nervous system and start to gently mold and shape them towards something that's going to be more conducive to the kind of life that we want to live, to the kind of family that we want to create, because that stuff is deep-rooted. So that's what's meant by somatic practice, being aware of and starting to address and work with that deeper layer of conditioning in the body and the mind and the nervous system.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So how did I come onto this path in this way? So these perspectives, these different practices of mindfulness and nonviolent communication and somatic experiencing, somatic techniques, these came kind of in a series in my life in my late teens and then into my early and mid 20s. And absolutely each one was sparked by some hardship or difficulty or pain that I was experiencing. And so in my late teens, I came into contact with mindfulness practice through studying religion and contemplative paths in college. And I was going through a really hard time. I was a child actor. I was living in New York City, running around to auditions, doing a lot of drugs, smoking a lot of dope. My parents were getting divorced. I had a falling out with my friends. It was, one of those times in life where it seems like everything is falling apart. And I heard about this study abroad program in India where it was like no drugs, no alcohol, no sex for 3 months in a monastery, wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and meditate. And something inside went, yes. For a 19-year-old young man, I said, sign me up. I wanted to just clear the decks. So that's how I started practicing meditation and learning contemplative tools. But then what I found was a few years in, like 5 or 6 years in, I was having these wonderful experiences with mindfulness practice and feeling calm and peaceful and open-hearted and patient and compassionate while I was meditating. And then as soon as I'd have a disagreement with a coworker, or as soon as I would talk with my mom or dad or brother, out the window. And so I recognized, all right, something's going on here. This stuff isn't translating. It's not showing up in my relationships, which is where it really matters. So I recognized I need a bridge. I need something to help me bring these deep values and perspectives of contemplative practice into my relationships and conversations. And that was when I met Marshall Rosenberg and found out about nonviolent communication. And I was like, yes, finally, like the rubber meets the road. I've got some tools now to work with the substance, the real grit of what's challenging in life. I've got the basis of awareness and presence and kindness and compassionate intentions. And I'm starting to learn the mechanisms of how to speak that, how to listen from that place, how to bring this into my relationships. And so I was like a sponge to water. I mean, I was just soaked that stuff up and was so ready and eager to learn it. And then just a year or two after that, hitting some blocks in my life and in my practice and in my relationships, and one of my mentors basically saying, there's this technique of somatic experiencing is the particular form that I learned, founded by a man named Dr. Peter Levine, that can help you work through some of these deeper patterns that are not just, about your thoughts or even your emotions, but that are actually kind of wired into your nervous system based on the intense experiences that I had growing up as a child with a mentally ill family member. And you might want to check this out. And so I did. And that was incredibly supportive to start to heal some of the pain that I was carrying, to start to get over some of the anxiety and in particular some of the anger and rage and the sense of not being seen and not trusting others that was there from the past, but that was still coloring my experience of life. And so over time, working in myself with each of these techniques, I came to realize their power, and they started to come together and not feel so separate. And so that's really where the book was born from, was wanting to share this stuff with others, to say, this stuff needs to be out there. So, similar to you, like I teach classes and workshops, and I also teach retreats on this stuff. And so putting all of that together in a format and a process that's accessible, that people can take and use in their daily life, with a relationship with a boss where it's adversarial or there's not a lot of trust, or a relationship with a coworker where it's dicey or someone's being passive aggressive, and how do I deal with that? Or these more intimate relationships with our loved ones, our partners, our children, right? How do we stay connected to our deeper values and create the kinds of conversations and relationships that we know are possible, that we do touch into in certain moments, these kinds of relationships that we know are possible, that we do touch into at certain times and certain moments, but that we lose contact with when things get hard.
Yeah. Yeah. We tend to be at our worst with those we love the most. And it sounds like that was really important to you to walk that talk, like to have that be something that was completely congruent from your heart to your senses to your speech, which
Yeah,
is so cool.
absolutely.
That's so cool. Yes, everything. I completely agree. Everything you said, I was like, oh yes. As a teenager, I was like struggling into doing all those things. It's so amazing how these challenges can become these like amazing teachers to guide us to these things. So you talk about this idea that should and shouldn't, creates this external motivation. So I've been talking about in Raising Good Humans is talking about creating that internal motivation. But I know that people have a lot of trouble with this. Like we have trouble because we kind of drink that, it's just everywhere. Like we're fish in the water of a behaviorist culture that thinks that, we have to make people have aversion to things that are not good and feel good about things that the reward and punishment. So can you talk a little bit about that internal versus external motivation and how the way we communicate can create that or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of NonViolent Communication, had a very simple and clear way of helping us to recognize the difference and shift our patterns around this. And I talk about this in the book. He said, and I think this is great for all of us and particularly for parents in terms of internal and external motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So he said, ask yourself 2 questions. First, ask yourself, what do I want this person to do? Right? What is the behavior change that I'm looking for? So if it's your child, I want my kid to clean up their room, do their homework on time, help out around the house, right? Okay, great. That's what you want. Now, if we stop there, we are likely to rely on our habitual strategies, our learned mechanisms for getting our needs met and doing what we want, which might include, right, using force, should, shame, some kind of reward, like if you do this, I'll give you that, which erodes that sense of internal motivation. So, but if we ask ourselves a second question, we're far less likely to use manipulation, coercion, force, shame, or blame to get what we want. And that second question is, what do you want this person's reasons to be for doing it? Why? Why do you want them to want to do it inside? Right? And few of us would ever say with anyone, whether it's a child or an adult, I want them to do this because they fear me. I want them to do this because they feel bad about themselves if they don't. No, we want people to do stuff because we want them to understand how it contributes to our life, to their life, or to the well-being of others. We want them to have that sense of intrinsic motivation, that they recognize and understand the innate value of what we're inviting or asking them to do. But in order to do that, we need to approach the situation from a different perspective. So when we ask, whether it's a child or an adult, when we ask somebody to do something, if they don't know why, if we don't tell them what's behind our request or the strategy that we have, if it's in conflict with their strategies, they're going to fight it. So, will you put your book down and look at me while I'm talking to you? Why? I want to know that you're listening, right? If we tell someone why, our kid knows, you want to know that I'm listening. Well, I am listening. You can talk to me. Oh, well, so there was a way for me to meet my need to know that you're listening and for you to still have your autonomy.
There was a whole bunch of different solutions to these needs.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and you talk about that in the book, that conflict generally occurs at the level of our strategies, what we want. And the more we're able to identify with our needs, why we want what we want, there's less conflict.
Right. And there's more room to be creative. There's more room to hear each other and to connect, to recognize the value behind each of the choices that we're making or each of the things that we are going for, what we want. And there's more room to be creative. Like in that situation with the book, it's like, yeah, if you want to know that I'm listening to you, I don't need to put the book down to do that. I can offer my reassurance. I'm not reading, I'm giving you my attention. And, I could say back to you what you said to me if you want to confirm that I'm hearing you.
Do you have kids, Oren?
I don't. I've worked with kids a lot over the years. I've taught mindfulness in the schools. I've done job training. And so I've spent a lot of time with kids. But as of yet, I do not have children. Yeah.
They're incredible teachers when they live with you 24 hours. It's so true. And they're incredible teachers when they don't live with you 24 hours. And that brings me back to, what you said before about that idea that we look at kids and treat them as less than. And I think that your book and what you're teaching here encourages people to look at all people as whole and as complete, and to give them that respect. So for the listener who wants to bring some of this into their life, they want to bring some of that presence. They want to communicate more skillfully, but they may be worried about having the time to implement a whole nonviolent communication course. What are maybe 2 or 3 things that you feel are most important to focus on?
Sure. That's a great question. Thanks. I'll say one thing maybe that comes before that, which is staying motivated is maybe not before, but staying motivated is really important because it does take time and it can be challenging. And so I think that one aspect of integrating these tools is staying motivated. And a great way to do that is to pay attention to the outcome of our behavior when we're on automatic. When we are relating, speaking, engaging habitually, are we happy with the results? Rarely. I know for myself, when I'm relating habitually and automatically, I'm rarely happy with the outcome. So if we keep noticing that, if we keep noticing when we lapse into our old habits, how the end result is not so much what we would like, that's really motivating for us. So that's one thing to set up.
Beautiful. And I want to add to that too, that
Please.
We are so imbued in a culture of shaming and blaming that the voice in our head, when we start to pay attention to that outcome, can be, horrible. If you listen to this podcast all the time and you want to be more mindful and you want to speak really well, and then you hear yourself just barking orders and commands, you think, oh my gosh, and you start to give shame and blame yourself internally. So when you are paying attention to the outcome of when we're on automatic, dear listener, I really invite you to really consider that a win, because you're seeing it, you're paying attention to it, and that is a great motivation. See it as a motivation, see it as actually a win, because you can't change anything you don't see.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. And seeing in the seeing is the possibility for freedom.
Yes.
In the seeing of it. And, I think that compassion, self-compassion is so important here, to recognize, when we do fall short of our expectations, as we do so often as human beings, and particularly, the friends I have who are parents, to recognize we're doing the best we can. And those habitual behaviors themselves are strategies to meet needs, right? To be able to identify, when I raised my voice, and said that, I was wanting cooperation. I was wanting to make sure that I got to work on time, to be able to bring that compassionate gaze to ourselves and recognize the things that we were, the good things that we were trying to accomplish. And then to also mourn, to mourn the needs that we didn't meet, the need for kindness, for tenderness, for, being more patient, and so forth. Another thing that's really important when thinking about integrating these tools, and then I'll get to some concrete tips, is you don't have to do all of it. In fact, it's better if you try not to do all of it. And I talk about this in the book, is that it's one small change at a time.
Yes.
Just take one tool that makes sense, that you feel like it's accessible and you can practice, and begin using it, and use it every day until it becomes second nature. One small change in your communication will make a world of difference if you stick with it over time. It takes you in a very different direction and starts to transform all of your relationships, because we're communicating in all these different areas of our life. So a few ways that people can start to work with their communication and make some changes. So one very simple way is just to pause, just to try to bring half a breath, just one moment of leaving a little bit of space to come back to your deeper intentions, to allow the wave of anger or reactivity or impatience or frustration, whatever it is, that impulse that's pushing you forward to say or do something that, is not the most helpful or skillful thing in the moment. If you can pause, now you have a little bit of choice. The more aware we are in a conversation, the more choice we have. So this is one really concrete way to start to work with communication. Doesn't need to be a long pause, but recognizing that space of just one breath can change what I say next.
Yeah. And it's very, very rare that we actually have to save our kid from running into the road. So you can take that pause.
Exactly. Yeah. Or reaching out to the stove or the blender or whatever it is. So that's one tool. The next, and we've talked about each of these already, so it's really just reiterating and articulating. The next is, can you come from curiosity and care? Can you remember, this intention to understand, to say, okay, what's going on for you? What is it that you're wanting? And towards oneself, what is it that I'm wanting? Can we bring forward this curiosity to see what really matters here? And this is the third tool, to train ourselves to focus on what matters. To start to try to listen for, this is a very powerful and transformative practice, to start to listen for the deeper human needs that may be at play in any moment, in any situation, whenever we remember. To try to view our child's behavior, our own choices and behavior through this lens of deeper human needs, and say, all right, what am I after here? What's really important to me? Or what is my kid getting out of this? Is this about fun? Is it about, I feel like they're provoking me. I feel like they're trying to get a rise out of me. What is this about for them? Are they feeling a sense of power? Is this about them actually exercising their sense of agency as an autonomous individual? Is this playful? Is this fun for them? Are they trying to connect with me in some strange way? They actually want a deeper sense of connection. They want some attention, maybe, right? This starts to change the whole atmosphere of the relationship and the conversation when we can shift our perspective to inquire about what really matters. What are the deeper needs here?
Oh, this is so beautiful. Oren, I feel like, dear listener, this is like a wonderful masterclass. There's so many things you could take here and work on for months from now, which is beautiful. So I really encourage you to get Oren's beautiful book, Say What You Mean, a not mindful approach to nonviolent communication. It's gorgeous. It has a lot to offer. And, I've got it all underlined and marked and all of these things, because I'm really, really enjoying it. So Oren, how can people, besides going to get the book, go get Say What You Mean, how can they connect with you and find out more about your teaching and everything you're offering?
Great. Sure. Thanks so much, Hunter. So they can check out my website, which is orenjaysofer.com, orenjaysofer.com. If they want a free guided meditation series and a short ebook on contemplative practice, I warmly invite you to sign up for my email newsletter. I send out a couple emails a month that I write myself. Each one has a teaching or a free article or talk that I've given in it. And the easiest way to do that is actually by text message. So if you send a text message to the number 44222 with the word guided, GUIDED. It'll walk you through the steps and you'll get signed up for my newsletter. So just text the word guided to 44222. Yeah.
We will include all of that in the show notes at mindfulmamapodcast.com. Oren, I really appreciate what you've put out into the world. I think it's really the perfect time for this we need more eloquent communication. We need more looking at what do people need, understanding each other's needs, and we need much more curiosity about each other. And so you're helping people bring this into the world with a real sense of groundedness and a real sense of a real foundation, just really heart-centered. And I really feel like this is going to have ripple effects for many, many years to come and for many, many people and families. So I just want to thank you for what you've done. It's really beautiful.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. It's really an honor and a gift to get to connect with people and share these tools, because they've been so powerful and transformative and meaningful in my life. And there's nothing I want more than for people to be able to create the kinds of relationships and connections and conversations that they long for, and which I know and we know are possible, because as you said, we need this more than ever in our society right now. And if we can start to do this in our personal relationships, if we can learn these tools step by step, we can start to bring it out more into our communities, into our societies, our organizations, our governments.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with you. Awesome. Thanks so much, Oren.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on the show, Hunter.
Didn't you just love Oren? Such wisdom. I really, really enjoyed spending that time with him. You could tell I was so excited. Oh my gosh. But yeah, we need to transform the way we communicate. There's so much there. So if you want to transform the way you communicate, not only can you go get Oren's awesome book, Say What You Mean, but we are having the Mindful Parenting free training happening very soon. And so you can check that out at mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. So I hope you'll be there. We're going to learn about what you shouldn't say to your kids. It's right in there on that free training. So go ahead and join up. And if you can't make it live, we'll send you the recording. It's at mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. And I'm wishing you a beautiful week. I'm wishing you peace, joy. I'm wishing you skillful communication, all that great stuff. I hope it for all of us. And sending you lots of love. And I can't wait to talk to you again next week. All right. Ciao. Namaste. Are you frustrated with parenting? Do you want to practice conscious, compassionate parenting, but you don't know how? It's not easy, and there's no roadmap for this. Until now. I'm Hunter Clark-Fields, creator of the Mindful Parenting course, and I know how frustrating it is because I've been there. I struggled as a young mom, and when I found myself yelling and triggered by my child, I knew there had to be a better way. And there is. Mindful parenting is different from other parenting trainings. They don't tell you that all of that good advice is as good as useless when our internal stress response is triggered. Mindful parenting teaches you research-based tools and practices to reduce your stress response so that you can respond rather than react. And it teaches you exactly what to say so that you can create willing cooperation from your child. You can learn more and enroll at mindfulparentingcourse.com, and you can join us for a free live training coming up soon where you'll learn why your kids don't listen to you, how your brain undermines your parenting, and how to create cooperative kids without losing your temper. Sign up now at mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. That's mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. I'll see you there.